time. Rise up and unite. Woo! Rise up.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the next episode of the Layover Live. It's just me tonight because Mark and Lyndsay have decided not to turn up. No, joking, they are here. Well, certainly Mark is anyway. Good evening, Mark. How are you?
Whoa. I'm all right. I'm okay. How are you?
Oh, wow. How quick was that? Lyndsay, I almost missed it. Sorry.
Did you manage? Just
did mission sending baby to bed? Is it complete?
No.
Oh, goodness. Never mind. So how have you been this week? What have you been up to?
Well, I tell you what I've been up to. I've been revalidating all sorts of bits of my instructor and examiner qualifications at work, plus other work. So that's a kind of load off, when you get those things done.
Yeah.
And a very positive learning experience for me as much as anyone else. So I don't do it very much, so it's always good to get it done and out of the way and learn a little bit more.
I'm sure Lyndsay and I are the same when we get our 6 monthly sims, Lyndsay. When you have that panic in the run up to it, the impostor syndrome that we were talking to Mandy about actually a couple of weeks ago. And
yeah,
you get in there and
get the fear about 2-3 days before.
Yeah.
So, stories out of school. I was once sick in the car park before going into the sim because I was so nervous. Yeah, and that's not that long ago, I can tell you. Not that long ago. My week, this week, has been mostly sponsored by Brewdog. I have been lost in lockdown. Yeah, the best 2 beers Brewdog have ever made, and it has kind of seen me through this week alone. So if this looks a bit fluid this week, it is sponsored by Brewdog. Not really, but if Brewdog want to sponsor it, I'm more than happy to take another load.
You've got a fridge ready and waiting. Yeah,
I have. Let's get on to talk about some planes. Everybody wants to talk about planes. Lyndsay, what have you been looking at this week?
So the Caspian Sea Monster, or so it's called. I don't know if you've got a picture of it there you can bring in.
Is that something that Mark takes to bed with him at the weekends, or?
Well, not for discussion on here.
No, it's more like this, isn't it? A bit more.
That's
like
right.
this.
Yes, this was a sort of an experimental ground effect vehicle, and it was a concept vehicle developed by the Soviets in the 1960s. And it's kind of got a bit of airplane technology fused with a little bit of maritime technology. It was in service from 1964 until 1980, and it held the world record for the largest and heaviest aircraft for most of that time. And I think it was only knocked off that perch, was it the Antonov?
The 225, so the 6-engine version of the thing we were talking about last week.
But, yeah. Oh, yeah. It looks awesome there, doesn't it?
So it looks huge. And it kind of had a bit of an identity crisis when it was in its kind of formative years, in that it was assigned to the Soviet Navy. However, it was flown by Air Force test pilots. And in all sorts of maritime traditions, there was a bottle of champagne smashed against the hull when it first went to sea. So it kind of had a little bit of both. And the way it operated was it flew in ground effect. So anywhere between sort of 5 and 15 meters above the surface of the water, this thing would just, I say, skim along. I don't think it's skimmed due to its weight and size. Well,
there you are.
There.
Yeah.
In full swim.
I'm just thinking of how we would describe this for our podcast viewers, listeners even. I don't even know where to start. It's got a funny little face. It's got at least 8 engines. It's got the back end of what appears to be like a Victor tanker, and then the middle bit from some kind of attack ship, and then stub wings. It
So-
must have been a long, very, very long party.
So what? So what are
They
those
had
things
to
on the
do.
back of it there? Those things, are those actually torpedo tubes, Lindsay? Those things on the back, or is it bigger than that? What is
On
it?
the top of it, do you mean?
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So there's 3 sort of platforms, and it used to skim along the surface of the water, undetectable to radars, and it used to have short and medium range missiles that it would fire at ships or anything else, I guess, that got in its way.
It's a beast.
So to give it
It's
some size context, it's 20 meters or so longer than a 747. But the
Wow.
wings span is only around about 35, 36 meters.
Mhm.
So it's got exceptionally short, stubby wings for the length of a vehicle.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it, and I do know a little bit about this, and they didn't actually designate it a aircraft, did they? The International Maritime Organization, I think, designated this a ship.
Right.
So I did read that somewhere, and I think it's the fastest ship in the world, or something ridiculous.
Yeah, so it's 230 knots was its average speed that it would go along.
That's awesome! Absolutely awesome.
And I think it topped out about 260 or 270.
Can you imagine if you're busy sitting in the middle of the Caspian Sea or something, and you're bobbing around in your fishing boat, and that thing came past? You'd think it was the end of the world.
I wonder. I mean, I wonder how much it carried. Have you got any ideas for how much it carried, sort of weight-wise? I mean,
Well, weight-wise, its kind of maximum weight was about just short of 500 tons.
bloody hell, it's awesome,
Yeah.
isn't it?
So the
Awesome.
Americans first discovered it by spy satellite at the end of the 60s, and they couldn't figure out if it was, well, they couldn't figure out what it was because they thought its wings are too small to be an aircraft, and it's, too long to fly. And they saw on the markings the KM. They saw the KM and they saw the Soviet flag markings on it from the pictures, and that's why they called it the Caspian Monster. But actually, in Russian, KM means prototype. So that's why it's got KM on it. So the CIA were kind of
Sweet.
onto them, but not quite.
Well, I've got a bit of surprise for you, because that one, I believe, was beached recently, wasn't it? Back in July. Hence, we've got those pictures of it beached.
Yeah.
It was on the way to a museum, and they've beached it in the hope that they can recover it, because it was actually sinking, I believe. But it's an old concept, but it's not really, because this cool thing, company in Singapore are actually making these now. So they're making a ground effect aircraft now. This is called the Airfish 8, which I presume they've had 7 before this that weren't quite as successful as this. But this is the Airfish 8. It's made by Widget Works, Singapore-based company. Couple of German engineers got together. This is a design from back in the Cold War days, actually. So probably the same sort of area as that Russian airplane. But I think this looks amazing. It actually looks future. It looks like something from the future.
And I guess, if a lot of these fancy islands that you go to in the Maldives and things like that, you have to jump on a speedboat, don't you? Or a twin otter or something like that. I guess that potentially could be quite a smooth ride in comparison to getting... I mean, Scott, I know you're brilliant with boats, but...
I'm not great with boats, but this one here is actually electric. So it's even better. So, in terms of its carbon footprint, it's minuscule. It flies along in ground effect. It does not quite as fast as the Caspian Sea Monster. It's about 150 knots, but that'll soon zip you between the islands in the Maldives. I'm not sure how plugging it in works, though. I'm not an expert, but water and electricity cables, probably not a good mix. But yeah, but it looks cool. Looks amazing. So
I wonder what
else?
kind of license you need. I wonder if you need flying things and boaty things.
Oh, I'm not sure, actually. Didn't think about that, because I suppose it's more of a, like the other one, it's probably more of a boat than it is a...
Yeah. You've certainly
that's
got to know all of
bizarre.
it. Anyway, really fascinating stuff.
Yeah. So what else have you been looking at, Mark? What have
I've
you
been looking at your Twitter stream.
Oh, you and the others, and millions of people.
And
yeah, go on.
Modest old Scott there.
Yeah.
And you posted a very nice time lapse, and it really made me miss being on the North Atlantic. And I know you're going to tell me I'm nuts, but I love a nice North Atlantic east or westbound. Loved a New York or a Newark or a Washington, and I think lockdown's making me a bit soft, maybe, and I'm pining for all this. But let's have a look. So where's your little time lapse?
Oh,
so
it is coming. It's such a
if
good
you're a
time
longer
lapse.
pilot,
Six hours of it in the dark. That's
this is very familiar. That nice little sunrise creeping across the horizon there.
So, Scott, when you took this, where did you start the time lapse and where did it finish?
I started it at 50 west and it finished at 20 west. So this was actually crossing the whole of the Atlantic.
Cool.
Using my new iPhone 12 Pro. It was really good, actually. I really stable. It sat there and just clicked away all night. I had no battery left at the end of it because ridiculously the screen stays on whilst it's doing the time lapses.
No.
Yeah, bizarrely. So you don't actually get much battery out of it. But go on, Mark. You were saying this made you miss the North
Atlantic. Yeah, really? It made me miss the North Atlantic, and it's because it's such an unusual bit of airspace. It's so historic. It's got loads of maritime linkage between flying and and the maritime world. And then I saw a really interesting article from Gnats talking about space-based ADS-B, and that's a shot from flight radar. But I don't know how many of our sort of viewers and listeners would really understand the North Atlantic, but there's no radar. Nobody knows where any of the aeroplanes are with any degree of certainty. You are not under control of a radar controller like you would be in Europe or North America or anywhere like that. Do you think that's a fairly unusual? Do people realize that even?
I don't know. I think what we get used to, Mark, is people see this picture, like Flight Radar 24, and they think, well, that's a radar picture. Obviously, somebody else has that picture somewhere and is controlling all these airplanes. But in reality, we know they're not. Control is done at the moment by timing, and distance. So you set speed, you cross the first little waypoint at a time, and off you go. You don't change your speed, and everybody doesn't change your speed, and you end up with them all marching along in lines there. I don't think people know that.
It's an extraordinary place, and if so this track system, as it's known, was originally set up for ships in about the 1890s, when shipping became much more frequent across the North Atlantic. There's a little view from my beloved old 767.
Oh goodness! How long ago was this? 1945. We haven't flown. When was the last time we flew 767?
Well, because it's very interesting. Because airplanes like 76 had no satcom. They had absolutely no satcom at all, and so you really were kind of on your own. HF was the only radio communication, and obviously now the whole of the North Atlantic is changing a bit, and I was going to kind of go on to talk about that. But it works incredibly well, but it essentially hasn't changed since the 60s. I think the NAT system was introduced in the 60s, and then it's developed. And effectively, what the way that we got a couple more slides, I think.
Well, what I was going to do first was I was going to go live to your first Atlantic crossing, go straight to the control room. Right. As they were issuing your control. So there they are, issuing your Atlantic clearance for the first time on your first Atlantic crossing as a captain, Mark.
Yeah.
Look at those lovely ladies issuing that.
That's me, actually. That's me third in from the right at the bottom.
But the truth is that even up until today, the North Atlantic has much more in common with this kind of controlling than it does with radar controlling. So that big chasm in the middle, that's the North Atlantic there. We just popped up what is an old plotting chart, and you can see this big line of these little diamonds either side of the Atlantic, and they're the oceanic entry and exit points. And because there was sort of close up there, the ones over near Canada all seem to be named after fishy things.
Oh, yeah, I didn't realise that. Loach, prawns, moat. Oh, I didn't realise that. Yeah.
Yeah,
How often have I been gone there and never realised there were fish?
So good to see that you were wide awake then every time you went across the...
Oh.
But the so over the years, what happened was that the aeroplanes got better at navigating, but certainly for a long while, 10-mile navigational accuracy was as good as it got, because inertial platforms basically could drift up to about 10 miles, and all the tracks were spaced wide enough so that basically if this person over here had a 10-mile error that way and that person over here had a 10-mile error that way, then they wouldn't hit each other. You showed Fate as the Hunter there. There's a couple of chapters in Fate as the Hunter, which I heartily recommend to pretty much anybody who's listening to us lot waffle on. But there's a really excellent section on getting into what was called Bluey West 1, I think it was, which is Narsarsuaq up in Greenland. And they're finding their way up the fjords, and they have to look for the correct entrance, and there's a wreck on the end of the fjord. Whilst we've moved on a bit, I would say that the North Atlantic is not that different just yet. So the other really interesting thing is that unlike the airways over Europe or America, they're not fixed. The tracks that we fly are not fixed. They change literally with the wind.
Oh, really? What,
and literally with the time of day.
A bit like this?
A bit like that. So the deeper red area there, that you've very nicely put that up, Scott, that's the sort of strongest winds. They're the strongest winds. And the eastbound tracks, which are generally available sort of late at night until early in the morning, tend to sit in the middle of that wind, which is why you get home really quickly and why it's sometimes very bumpy. And the westbound tracks, which operate from about 9 in the morning till middle of the afternoon, they're usually quite a bit higher. There's very often one that creeps off down to the Caribbean and places like that. But it's a really interesting bit of international collaboration as well, because obviously there's a whole host of nations that get involved in this on a daily basis. There's a collaboration exercise. Figure out how we're going to get airplanes to and from America. It's just incredible.
I'm really interested because you mentioned something that a lot of people don't know, is that in the morning, or our morning here in the UK, predominantly all the tracks are going westbound, so it's almost a one-way system.
Yeah.
And then that swaps at about tea time, Eastern Standard Time, so a little bit later in the evening for us. Around midnight, it swaps to allow all the eastbound traffic to come on those tracks. So people don't really realize it's almost a one-way system that swaps over, a bit like the Mersey Tunnel at peak times, the open extra lanes going in the other direction. Yeah, I find it really cool. I find it really cool that they do that.
I find it amazing. But what's happening is space-based navigation. So this space-based monitoring, and they're using the Iridium network with ADS receivers. They're going to have, or they're just about to start it all up, but effectively a radar picture. It's not radar, but it's ADS driven right across the North Atlantic. And that'll be the first time. And I just think that's extraordinary, given the number of airplanes that have crossed the Atlantic since the end of the Second World War.
I think it's really cool. I just wanted you to explain this to me, because I love pictures like this. So we've got a couple of pictures here. We got this one and another one. So this is, what is it, Mark? Tell us.
That is a great circle. So people say, why do you go such a long way round? They think we're just building hours or something like that. Why do you go a long way
Well,
out?
I'm just getting horrendous flashbacks from my ATPL flight planning.
I know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The Great Circle route.
Is it something like a run line or a great circle?
D-long,
This is a great
kind of an
circle.
inlet, all that kind of stuff.
And why is it a great circle? Because when you stick it on a globe just like that, look, et voila, there's the same route on a globe, and it's a straight line, a direct straight line. It isn't geography great?
Well, but it kind of proves the world's not flat. But that's a discussion for another time.
Is it really?
Dan, there's a good question from Dan.
Oh, go on. I'm sorry, I'm not on the question bit today. Let me.
Right, I'm on it.
I know. Yeah. Hello, question people. That Scott's been.
I've been
ignoring.
completely neglecting you. Sorry.
Game changer. ADSB. It really is a game changer. And I think it's in concert with a few other things. It's a really massive game changer. You don't need to rely on radar in areas that are hugely remote, like northern Canada or the Atlantic or whatever. Also, mountainous areas. So you potentially got like a radar picture in very mountainous areas that might have radar sort of dead spots. Reduced separation has been a bit of a feature of the North Atlantic for a long while. So it used to be 2,000 feet apart. Remember, everybody's going more or less in the same direction. Then it went to RVSM 1,000 feet apart. And what that practically meant is we all started getting really good photos of us flying across the North Atlantic. Ultimately, the separation reduces because the kit gets better. And in fact, the kit got so good, they had to introduce a thing called SLOP on the North Atlantic, which is, I'm sure they just wanted to call it SLOP, and then they had to think of the words afterwards, but strategic lateral offset. And that was simply because people were sitting in each other's wake. So the nav kit was so accurate, you'd burble around in each other's wake, which is really, really quite amazing. So in terms of reduced separation, what it gives you is more aeroplanes across the North Atlantic, which so it's a great question. That's another picture. We're off.
Sorry, I'm having a wibble here with the technology this evening.
It's probably that brew dog.
It's not the brew dog. It's actually I've completely lost it. Sorry, Lyndsay, can you take control?
Lost control.
Can you take control from your side? My mouse has actually stopped working, and that's what's happened.
So I don't know about you, but the North Atlantic trips for me, I used to enjoy. I enjoy looking out the window. I used to enjoy looking at the sort of frozen wastes of Canada, looking at these tiny settlements. I used to enjoy arriving over New York and going into Newark, etc. I really enjoyed it.
My
Your
favorite, Northern Lights, every single time. To see the Northern Lights when you're crossing was just such a cool thing.
So go on, tell us about it.
Well, it was a bit hit and miss on trips. And actually, Scott, I think you've got some great pictures from some of your trips of the Northern Lights.
I do, yeah. And I'd love to bring them up, but I can't. Really sorry.
It just looked like the sky was alive with this kind of green, twinkling curtain. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, digging into your fourth curry of the flight,
Yeah.
couldn't beat it.
Yeah, we've got, I can't even say that. What does that say? The Smudger Man. SLOP was, to an extent, it was to reduce the vertical collision risk because everybody was literally sitting over each other. But the chance of you being absolutely over somebody when you needed to come off the tracks was pretty unlikely. But yeah, it's really amazing that this is happening now, and I think probably even more amazing is that people didn't realize that it was literally just pushing counters across a map beforehand on what was in some cases billion-dollar air routes. Just amazing. How does PBN factor into the Gnats? So this is performance-based navigation. I guess all of this kind of what you shed airspace, so minimum performance airspace, etc. Very common now. Pretty much everywhere requires some form of PBN, but effectively what that's asking for is that your aeroplane can guarantee its position to within however many miles. It might be 4, it might be 10, it might be 3, it might be 0.5 of a mile. So that's effectively the aircraft part of the deal, and it's absolutely essential for NAT flying. Absolutely essential. And in fact, if you can't fly PBN, then you're duty bound to run on the what are called the blue spruce routes. So if you're busy ferrying airplanes around, if flying a Seneca across the Atlantic, then you'll tend to use the blue spruce routes, and you'll hop across from Greenland to Iceland and then down into Scotland usually, which would be an awesome trip. I'm desperate to do a trip like that, Scott. Just saying. Oh, we can't hear you now. He's just gone completely mute.
I'm temporarily back in some semblance of control, but it's only temporarily. We should have let Lyndsay do it. We should have stuck with Lyndsay doing it. And
Woman's touch.
My computer got overwhelmed.
Dan's got it. So it's very, very interesting. The North Atlantic's come down from these enormous separation minima, where it was rare, wasn't it? Unless you were sat, behind somebody, it was rare to see another airplane. Of course, we're comfortable with them. Of course, we are. I think the whole way the airspace is thought out is excellent. The whole way that training on the North Atlantic works and the professionalism of other crews, absolutely superb.
I think, just to answer Dan's question here as well, from my point of view, when the rules came out originally, everybody was using, INS that wasn't particularly accurate, waved around a lot, it drifted a lot. Now we've got, triple GPS, triple INS, updated, blended solutions, all these kind of things, which give us a greater degree of accuracy than we've ever had before. In fact, et voila. Concord chart. Oh my goodness, where are you getting those from? Right, come on, we've got to move on. Now that I have control, we do have to move on. I've got one story that I want to bring up today. I had to laugh at this. This was really funny when I saw it. The Transport Secretary. This is from Simon Calder. Yeah, he may have has opened up to Narnia and the moon, and this was all about the government have opened up Israel, Namibia, Rwanda, Sri Lanka, Uruguay, Bonaire, which I've never even heard of, St. Eustace and Saba. Anyone?
Nope.
No, good. The Northern Mariana Islands.
Handy.
Yeah, well, I can tell you they're very close to the Southern Mariana Islands. That's about as much as I know. And the U.S. Virgin Islands, I know where they are, at the bottom of the Caribbean. But it's really interesting because they much lauded this as an opening up, and we'll talk to our guest about this in a minute. But actually, you can't get to them because the Caribbean ones require a connection in many cases through the US. And guess what? We're banned from going to the US unless you're a US citizen, so we can't go there. Also, the African ones, the same. We've got to go somewhere else. And Israel, Sri Lanka, and Uruguay have us on their banned list, so we might not be on their banned list, but it's the other way around. Rubbish, absolute rubbish. That brings me on to our guest this week, because I know nothing about travel, quite apart from we fly airplanes around the world.
We go there, don't we? And that's it.
We do, yeah, and we're not very good at it when we go there. We tend to go to dingy bars, predominantly run by weird Irish expats, that sell chicken wings and lousy beer. Oh, excuse me. Our guest this evening, Gilbert, describes himself as a ever-curious traveller. I'm not sure what that means, but I'm sure we'll find out in a minute. His normal adventures outside COVID time take him across the globe. He travels about 250,000 miles a year normally. That's probably more than we do. He's on CNN. He's been on BBC, Good Morning America, Sunday Times, Travel Magazine, you name it, he's done it. He's obsessed with these deals, hence his nomiker, God Save the Points. Constantly in search of an edge on shares of every travel trick. On his website, God Save the Points, if you want to go and see it afterwards, Gilbert will be there. Good evening, Gilbert. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks for the very strange introduction.
Sorry. I thought I was doing okay.
Very strange introduction. I'm going to take that as a massive compliment.
It is. Only Scott can do things, It's like there's a special way of an ever curious traveler. Not sure what that means. Okay, great.
How are you, my friend? It's lovely to see you again.
Yeah, same to you. Same to you. I'm pretty good, doing well. You know, same as everyone else in the UK. Limited, limited.
Yeah, I know. So I'm going to dive straight in. What do you think about these travel corridors and Simon Calder sending us off to Narnia?
Yeah, I mean, Simon's right. This is one of those things where thank you for nothing. You know, congratulations. You've enabled perhaps 3 scientists going to do geological surveys of the Marianas Trench or something like that. You know, to be able to like board private charter planes. There's no one going to most of these places. Most people can't go. You know, I think in the broader picture, the ever-changing nature of them makes it impossible for any normal consumer to plan travel. You know, especially with the quarantine involved. So I was in LA. I'm American. My wife's British, or we live here. But for me, you know, we went there. We had 14 days of quarantine. We couldn't go for a run. Like I couldn't even leave the grounds of my house. I think, you know, I get, you know, of course, stay out of the community, but I don't see what's wrong with going to a park at 6 a.m. and having a little trot in the outdoor air. Not currently allowed for people who are returning from these destinations, which aren't on the travel corridor list. So it's like the places that are on the list, you mostly can't go to. And the places that aren't off the list, that aren't on the list, you suffer so much when you get back that you might as well not have bothered in the first place. So my opinion isn't very favorable, I guess, is the short and the long version of that.
We'll come on to what you think about the future in a minute, but I know you were sitting in the green room listening to Mark's explanation of the Gnats while I made a complete and utter hash of the technology. You've traveled the Atlantic hundreds and hundreds of times. Did you actually know about that? Is that something you would have, as a traveler, known about?
Well, so I was really particularly interested by that North Atlantic airspace thing, that there isn't actually a more accurate picture than I would have thought there is. I thought that was fascinating. I loved reminiscing of Northern Lights, you know, those times that you see them. You know, I think some of my favorite ever memories in life are when you have like obviously you weren't snoozing, but when you wake up from a snooze and you look out the window and it's like, holy shit, you know, that's it's not something you see every day. So,
no.
You know, very much like missing those times as well, obviously in a different way. But I thought it was really interesting to know more about the airspace, but also just like you just want to get on a plane. You want to have those sunrises and sunsets. There's nothing quite like it wherever you're sitting on the plane, and ready for more of those again.
I'd say sitting at the front of the plane with it in your face, Gilbert, is not as nice as sitting in 1A with a glass of champagne. Just to put it into perspective. Sorry, Mark, go on.
I'm missing even that. But Gilbert, have you always had the travel bug, or it's something that sort of came to you?
I have, for sure. And oddly, like I've been obsessed with points since I was a kid too. I remember distinctly being a child. I played tennis a lot as a kid, so I've traveled more than your average, you know, youngster. And I remember distinctly, not even being a teenager yet, reading on a napkin on a plane, like a Coca-Cola napkin from Delta, saying, you know, collect miles and earn free flights. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do, you know, because I like this whole thing. So these airplanes. And yeah, just kind of through various stages of life, I worked in the music business. I traveled a lot for that. And then someone said, you know, you should start a blog and sell free information on the internet, and that'll, you know, really help you out in life. So I decided to give up my paying day job and just start writing free content on the internet. But it worked out a few years later.
It's absolutely fascinating.
A huge decision for you to, and I know a lot of people want to get into blogging, particularly travel blogging is particularly popular, and lots of people out there profess to be experts. And you can be an expert in 10 seconds by setting up a YouTube channel and cracking on nowadays. So
usually you get like, you know, if you have an inspirational quote and then you get one of your bum with like the beach in the background, you know, and set up an Instagram page, that does very well. That's
not for Scott.
It's not going to be good. It's not going to be good, mate.
I just like to point that out.
Niche there among Brewdog fans, like, you know.
Yeah, it's going to be a niche that's going to be paying through the dark web as opposed to the normal web. But I mean, Gilbert, there's only a very small number of you do it very successfully. You know, I can name the others, but I won't. But it's a very niche market. So what makes you know, what makes it so niche? How do people come? Why do people come to you for your deals? How do you get those deals? I mean, are the airline paying you? Are you getting, you know, freebies from the airlines to do this and promote their product?
Yeah, so so every shop is different. I think for me, something that I value very much is not really taking freebies, unless it's something that I can't do. So I've been lucky a few times to go on, like, this is probably one of the 5 free flights I've ever taken, because it was when we flew from London Gatwick to London Heathrow. I don't believe they sell many tickets on that route. So,
they might do at the moment. Yeah.
I mean, hey, it's funny you said. I mean, that is the new trend, these flights to nowhere, where people just go up and they just miss the experience and they have a meal and they land. But for me, I think a lot of the integrity that drives people to the site is knowing that, like, I did buy that ticket or I used miles, and that I'm in some way showing that without some extraordinary level of income or, ridiculous thing, that I'm able to leverage the things I'm doing in my life. And so if I can do it, as a half-brained idiot, then, someone with 3/4 or perhaps a full brain might even be able to do it even better. So for me, that's always been the thing, just my experiences firsthand, relaying those things, so city guides and stuff. If I'm writing about it, I've been there, I've eaten there, I paid for my meal. I value that. Some others don't. That's fine. I think a lot of the bigger papers, it's all about, like, they get invited by a press office and they write these fabulous things, and, something that, and that's that. But everybody has their thing. That's my personal way. I think people come for timeliness. We try to be very timely. If there's a good deal, people come for a bit of unbiased feedback. Not everything an airline, a hotel, or a destination does is good, particularly in COVID times, whether it's airline refunds or a destination that, had a plane full of people and they decided to change the entry rules while the planes are in the air. These things ultimately don't help travel or the recovery in travel. And so I think it's good to be able to have a voice and some scale to call those things out. And I would say, like, if there is a highlight to what I do, it's that occasionally some of the things I say matter and some things get walked back, whether it's, in the loyalty perspective or destinations thinking, yeah, they have a point there, actually, like, this is a bit nuts. So for me,
one of the things I follow you on Twitter, as you know, Gilbert, and one of the things that really I watched you do over the last couple of months is that you haven't stopped traveling, which is quite interesting. Obviously, current restrictions aside. I noticed that you traveled with family. Yeah, cute little picture. You traveled with family and you traveled yourself as well. I know that you went to the US. I think it was via Amsterdam.
Yep.
What was it like? Because a lot of people are avoiding travel at the moment because of worries over COVID, worries over being on an airplane. Did you feel safe, or was it any different?
Yeah, so of course, Lyndsay, Mark, Scott, you know better than I do. But to me, the air experience is actually the most refreshing part of it all. It's that it's still the same, as even frustratingly so. You get to the airport, there's still perhaps a little line to stand in. You go, you drop your bag if you have one, you wait in a security line. Of course, you're socially distanced now, you're wearing a mask, but, like, the nuts and bolts are the same, I think. And I feel like it's this, my explanation of it is it's an awkward first date. People felt very comfortable in their relationship with travel and airports to an extent. But now you go to the airport and you're kind of like getting to know you again, like, hey, it's like, oh, it is just the same. And I go to the boarding gate and I wait and I get on the plane and people are nice and you watch a movie and you get where you're going. So I think it's remarkably the same, which is an odd thing to say, but people expect there to be so many differences. Of course, the safety elements are very positive and very different. The masks, the gels you get on board and stuff to sanitize your seat. But for me, like, I've found the airport is the easy bit. That's where you believe in the HEPA filters, you believe in the safety that the airlines are putting into their equipment and to make people safe. It's those next bits of, like, getting from the airport to where you're staying, and is the hotel taking it seriously? So those are the new, things that people have to bring into the equation that they didn't before. But yeah, for me, love being on a plane again. Feels great.
So moving into that, you've talked about, holidays and uncertainty, and we've got to look beyond this now into 2021. What's Gilbert's top tips for 2021? Don't give them all away, Gilbert, because Lyndsay and Mark and I are yet to book for next year. So keep a couple back.
Yeah, so I mean, there's always lots of hyperbole about, Black Friday and, these amazing deals, but it's actually true, especially this year, even for the cynics, like travel needs us again. And the deals are coming out accordingly. You're seeing like 3-figure long haul business class instead of 4-figure long haul business class, and lots of things starting tomorrow that are for people who always wanted to try some of these things. They're as good as it will ever get in terms of opportunities. Same with hotels. A lot of them are doing, you buy the hotel, you pay the normal price, but then you get 40% back and credit to spend at the resort. All sorts of really cool things. And so it's fun to see, as difficult as it is for many people, that airlines, hotels, tourism boards, they're getting creative. They're bringing out some super deals. Even BA first class is £1,600 right now, return to the US. Quite a few destinations. Wow. It's like the price most people would dream of paying for business class. So it's a cool week if you're looking to book something. For me, my tips as far as the destinations go: look for places that are naturally socially distant, right? It's somewhere that you're going to be outdoors, that you can enjoy great meals outside, hiking, beaches. There's not a whole lot of, COVID spread through snorkeling, I don't believe. I haven't seen the numbers lately, but, I believe that's a pretty safe thing to do. So I think, just being mindful. I'm trying to stay in smaller hotels, whether that makes sense, like real sense or not. I'm looking more towards Airbnbs and alternatives, just so I'm around fewer people. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
So Gilbert, if we go pre-COVID and potentially post-COVID, when you're planning your trips, how do you decide where you're going to go? Do you base it on, actually, this is somewhere I've not been before, so this looks like a cool destination? Or do you go online and look for the best deals? Or what's kind of the decision-making process and when you're writing your articles?
Yeah, so it's a great question, because it's genuinely a mix of the two. I can kind of say I've been everywhere now. So I either go back to the places that I know make me feel, happy and rejuvenated, and, miss that food that I think about every day, sitting in the cold in the UK, or it's somewhere new and exciting. And then sometimes it's just, there's an amazing deal and I can't help myself because I'm like a puppy dog, and, you flash something in front of my eyes and I just, I'm going to chase it. And so occasionally the deal dictates the trip, and my poor wife is like, here we go. Like, sometimes it works out all right for her. Other times, just like, I can't believe we're doing this again.
Where's the oddest place you've gone on in search of a good deal?
I think equally amusing are the hoops you'll jump through to pick up the deal, where it's like, okay, oh, there's these amazing flights from Vancouver to Auckland, New Zealand for $700. I'm like, yeah, but we live in London. It's like, oh, we'll get there. Don't worry. Vancouver is only a 9+ hour flight away. So yeah, just things like this where you see an amazing opportunity, you somehow want to get yourself to one of these places. I do that a lot less now that we have a young one as well. I'm sure you would agree, nearly impossible to build in like 8 connections and have a happy child. So yeah, it happens less now. We've been to some weird places in India. Like I was trying to get to like a regional airport, and the taxi driver spoke 0 English, and he was picking up other people on the side of the road for the whole trip. So like it started out like I'd paid for like a private taxi at the hotel, and by the time I got to where I was going, there was
it's a bus.
He actually picked up on the side of the road in the car with me, and I was like,
Gilbert's new friends.
Yeah, exactly.
So is the one trip that you could look back on now with Mrs. O and say, I wish we hadn't have done that? Is there any one that you've truly regretted?
Yeah, it was back in more like budget travel days in the beginning of our relationship, and we did Morocco cheaply, and I wouldn't suggest it again. I had food poisoning, which lasted like weeks. I think I had like got like a bug that was beyond just your normal 24-hour course of awfulness. And yeah, that was an awful like month recovering from that few days.
A month.
Oh dear. Yeah, that's
Goodness.
that's bad. So look, Gilbert, quite a few of our listeners are light aeroplane pilots, or they're interested in light aeroplane. Now, Morocco is kind of reachable in a light aeroplane with a few stops.
Yeah.
Where would you say to go do if you could in that part of the world?
I mean, I would say if you're going, especially in a light aircraft, make the journey up into the Atlas Mountains. I don't think the cities are typically as rewarding as you might hope they are, especially in like a big hotel. But once you get into the kind of actual beautiful mountains and everything, pretty spectacular. I think Casablanca is very cool as well. But it's not my first stop, I would say.
Okay.
It's a nice place.
Flipping on its head, then, if you were to do the same. So, Gilbert, I know where you live. I've got your number. There's an airport near you. I bring a little airplane with Mark and Lyndsay, and we're going to stick you in the back. We say, right, we're full of fuel. We've got 2.5 to 3 hours flight time in our little airplane. Where are we going?
This is a good question. I tend to have all of my decisions made around food. So
me too. But mine's more chicken wings.
I think
yours is slightly more refined.
I think it's like, are we going for ham in a square in Spain, or are we going for, cacio pepe or something like that? And
the decision is yours. Where are we going?
Right now, I'm going for the point possible. Like I need
just to let you know, whichever one you pick, we might actually do. So think very carefully about it.
Let's go San Sebastian.
San Sebastian.
Ooh.
Okay.
So we'll have to. And why? Why did you pick that one?
Food. I thought we'd established that.
Oh, it's food. Yeah, but what kind of food? I've got to be after details here, Gilbert. Come on. Have they got chicken wings in an Irish bar? Or
coming down the eastern seaboard? Like we can stay on topic here.
Yeah, Gilbert. A long time ago.
Sorry to interrupt, but like I'd seen those things before, and I'd always heard that there were some. I think Scott had pointed out some funny ones along the years of those tracks that you get put on where the waypoints are like have a series of kind of linked names, and I'd never seen that with the Eastern Seaboard around Canada before.
There is a cool one actually in Dallas, which is all Looney Tunes characters, and I'll get that for next week, and I'll find it. It's really something to do with a puddy cat. But I'll find that. That's pretty cool. Gilbert, I can't let you go because we're coming to the end of this now. I can't let you go without explaining to me what is the link between you and Leonardo DiCaprio. I've Googled you earlier, and I don't Google guests very often, but I Googled you, and this came up. Now I know everyone wants to be a pilot. You're only human. I get that. But what is this all about? So
obviously, when he was doing Catch Me If You Can, he was looking for a guy equally inspirational in life with as many, unique backgrounds to draw from. And the first person that came up, they said, I know you're very busy. I know you have lots going on, but would you mind giving Leo some advice on, how to appeal to women, how to act, in different roles, how to wear a nice suit properly, really make it look like it fits.
He says sitting there in his hoodie. Yeah, that's fine. No, genuinely, Catch Me If You Can. I Googled Catch Me If You Can with Gilbert, and it came up. So tell us about when you did that and what that was about.
That was one of the most amusing things ever. It eventually went too far and became almost terrorizing for me, which I'll really before we go. But effectively, a few years ago, I had a new theme for my blog, and I was joining a new network, and I wanted to draw some attention. So I thought, okay, I'd heard that a certain eccentric billionaire who happens to own a British airline would often switch with passengers in economy, for the flight just just to kind of give that cool experience, and the boss looking like an everyday guy. And I thought, I could do that and just give away my seat in business class. Like if someone's on the same flight, I'll happily swap them if they catch me in the airport. And it, for whatever reason, it must have been, we didn't have Trump, we didn't have all these other exciting things in the world every day taking the headlines. So it ended up becoming kind of like an actual viral sensation around the world. Lots of people covered it, and lots of people found out about it, and it was great. Like, it made lots of people's days, years, whatever, where they took my seat, I took theirs, and it became this fun game, social media clues. And I did it again last year, and it had reached the point where the lunatics were out, basically, because we expanded into doing it in cities as well. So it wasn't just flights, it was like hotels and stuff,
So people were actively
Hunting you down.
hunting you.
To a point where it got very strange. And
Oh, really?
yeah. And I basically left the US like with a fake mustache, glasses.
So you were getting chased like Frank Abagnale back in the day.
There's a photo one day which will tell you everything you need to know. There won't be aired.
Oh, really? Gilbert, it's been really great catching up with you. I think we've had a great catch up talking about travel. Our first foray into travel, because what we're trying to do is give this sort of the layover a bit of a broader scope, talk about some travel and lifestyle stuff as well as Avgeekery. And I know you're a great Av geek as well. Got some...
so cool just to hear you speak. These are things that I think anyone who travels as much as I do, you are curious. It's not whether you're thinking about it all the time, but those thoughts have crept into your mind as you see another plane, flying over, or zipping past. And so really cool to actually hear from everyone how that happens.
And Gilbert,
yeah, well,
I'm keen to ask how you think the travel world's going to change in the next 6 months, 8 months, year.
I think bookings are showing that people believe in it again. They believe that we're going to see some level of normalcy, which is going to alleviate whatever concerns or gripes they have with the current experience, however warranted. And, I hope that we can get to a point where the primary concern isn't the virus once it's been dealt with. Of course it is right now. It's the most important thing in the world that we get through this, and not, especially now, like we're getting to the good stuff. Let's get there safely. But it'll be great when it's all about the destination and it's all about the trip, and am I going to get all the trimmings on board and all these things that people really deserve from their trips. Like this travel to me is inherently special to everyone, whether it's connecting with old love, new love, finding, the thing that makes you fall in love with food, whatever. It's a very important thing in any life for whatever reason you do it. And I think it'll be really nice when we get there. But I think it's going to be different. Business travel will never be the same, but people really miss travel. And I think they're going to have a deeper relationship with it. And we'll see people taking it more.
Yeah, really interesting. Sorry, Scott.
No, it's fine. I just want to bring this up. It says, I know James does his own travel videos, and he did one during lockdown as well, which I watched when he took a train from northern Italy all the way down across on a boat to Sicily as well, which I didn't even know was a thing. But
I don't do boats.
No, I don't do boats either, but it was on a train on a boat. But James says, he agrees with you. It's the same as before, but just with masks. And there was another comment here, which I thought was really nice. More bars per square mile than anywhere else in the world. Is that where you're taking us, Gilbert? That'll be great. Sounds amazing. Gilbert, I know that we've got a secret between you, me, and Lyndsay that we are actually, this is not our last collaboration before the end of the year. We've actually got something else coming up, haven't we, very, very soon, which we're not allowed to talk about. And because I've had a couple of brew dogs, I'm going to leave it there because otherwise I'll spill it and we'll all know. But thank you very much for supporting the thing that's coming up towards the end of the year. And Lyndsay and I will tell people about that perhaps next week. Lyndsay, do you think we'll be able to tell them about it? I think so. And we will see you before the end of the year and talk more travel nonsense. Gilbert, thanks so much for coming on. It's been great.
Thanks, Gilbert.
Thanks, Gilbert.
Wow. Lots of travel nonsense, lots of airplane nonsense. Sounds amazing.
And super positive. I mean, it's lovely to just think about that, isn't it now? Just going traveling. Oh my goodness. How
And do you know what? I
nice.
think people really miss it. I think, you know, they've been stuck with their families, they've been stuck in their house, and people want to get away. You know, they want to go and have a bit of sunshine, you know, over the winter. And I think when it starts to spool up again, they'll be ready to go.
I completely agree. I've been so fortunate to go to Washington, you know, 3 or 4 times, and again, I'm going next week. And to actually just travel on the plane is just I can't explain to you how different it feels to go and, you know, be somewhere else for at least even one night. It was fantastic. The one thing I did notice when Gilbert talked about awkward first dates was a bit of an eye contact thing going on between you two there. Gilbert missed it, but I didn't. So is that a story for another time, Lyndsay? Or
Yeah, probably.
Oh no, we can share.
Okay, all right.
So on our first date, we went out for dinner, and the bill came to, let's say, £50. And because we were
cheapskate.
Yeah, I know, because it was Scottish, and because we were too busy gazing into each other's eyes, we just put 20 quid in each and legged it out the restaurant and got chased out by the manager because we'd underpaid the bill.
Wasn't really thinking. It was back in the days when you could use cash.
That's not an awkward first date. That's an illegal first date, because that's theft.
And there was this big hand yoinked Mark back into the restaurant and said, "Look, you've not quite settled the bill."
And somebody that wants to underpay. That's the person for me.
So, it's going to be great next week, isn't it? Next week's going to be amazing because I'm not here. It's just you two. So actually, you might be able to get the technology to work. I'm really sorry. My mouse actually broke. I've got a wireless mouse, and it actually ran out of battery. And by the time I figured out that that's what had happened, it was all too late. I'm really sorry about that. My fault entirely. It won't happen again. It's a promise. But next week, you're on your own with Matt. So tell us about that. We
have Matt Dearden. Matt, if you ever watched a program called The Worst Place in the World to be a Pilot, which looked like the best place in the world to be a pilot, Matt was kind of the star of that. He started his career in IT. He wanted to be an airline pilot. There weren't really very many airline pilot jobs around. He thought, oh, brilliant, I'll go and fly out in Indonesia and Papua. And quite honestly, the stories he's got are absolutely incredible. I've been flying with him since. He's back in the UK now, and we went on a nice little trip in the PC-12 that he flies. But he's just a fascinating guy. He's a really, really interesting guy. He's got an interest in the Catalina that's stuck up on Loch Ness.
Oh, yeah. I saw that actually.
Almost fixed, yeah.
Also, the planning to get it out of there, it's had a huge amount of public support, hasn't it, in terms of finance and whatnot to help them get it out there. Oh, I'll be really interested to watch that. I'm actually going to be flying yet again to Washington for the 5th time this month. So I'm going for my green card this time. So I'll really look forward to seeing it when I land and catching up with you. It's been great to catch up with you, gang. It's another great show, I think, and looking forward to the next one next week.
Lovely.
Bye, everyone.
Night.
Thanks for joining in.